like to think. I like deep focus. That's actually how you really figure things out. Kind of create the conditions which foster deep thought, and then let your mind sift through all the data and work things out. But every now and then, which really means all the time, I get distracted by thoughts and notions which kind of have a short distance to the end of that thread, distracted by things or matters which, sometimes they have no depth. Often our minds, if we let them, just want to complain about something. But that keeps us on the surface. A lot of people are content to just kind of live there in the shallow parts. And let's face it, even in the deepest of oceans, it still has shallow parts. We often find ourselves kind of hanging out near the surface there because it's easier to snag or catch a breath from near the surface. So just like you, sometimes I explore the little things, even the ones which kind of just bug me, or the small curiosities. And I figure that most of this, or these to you, are going to seem meaningless. They're going to seem petty compared to the other things that I have to say. And by the way, I do still have a lot to say. Then these petty little bits, I can kind of lump them all together. And instead of doing a bunch of little 1-minute video calls that sound like rants, just dump them into the same garbage can of thoughts in this one call that nobody cares about. So that's what this is, thematically anyway. Questioning the behaviors and apathy, willful apathy, which I suspect is just a coping mechanism, as triggered by the smaller thoughts. And here's a few. The other day...
This call is from a federal prison.
Thank you. The other day, I was presented with news articles by, quote, news organizations. You can't see my air quotes, news organizations, which people just automatically assign credibility. And I found myself asking again, why are these so-called news organizations so proud to be so wrong? I still, for some naive reason on my part, I'm amazed at how they misinform you, the public, and often with intent. The very public that they purport to be worthy of your trust, the public trust, a trust that's greatly misplaced. I speak as somebody who, by the way, don't forget, I owned a newspaper, and the latest was a newspaper, I think it was the Clarion Ledger, in fact, so not a small paper, which recently made the claim that an operational contract that I held was with, quote, foreign nationals. That is completely false. It is absolutely reckless, by the way. Foreign nationals. This isn't one of those stupid little statements by an idiot reporter, like whatever idiot it was that said that I was a Wayne Newton impersonator, which, by the way, is plain stupid and makes no sense, makes that reporter look just as foolish and stupid because it's entirely made up. There's no such thing as a Wayne Newton impersonator, people. Such a thing doesn't exist. So the reporter that made that shit up is an idiot. Everyone who reported what that reporter did is an idiot, and it just shows. You obviously did no research. You were just copying some other reporter. That's how we know you're stupid, too. Anyway, the recent claim by some Clarion Ledger reporter that my contract was with, quote, foreign nationals, that's actually done with sinister intent. The same sinister intent as Washington Post's Kimberly Kendi, who is a half-brain who should never be employed by any honest organization anywhere. I guess, she really wasn't. She is the reason, people like her, she is the reason that there are instructions on shampoo. But worse, the claim is just dangerous. It's not merely untrue, but it's sinister and it's dangerous because what they're trying to imply to you is a deliberate twisting of matters. So first off, think of what the implication actually is. Ask yourself what someone actually means by this. When they say, what does foreign nationals mean? Or, quote, what is a foreign national? So what is it that they're trying to plant here? What they're trying to do here is plant the idea of a traitor. That's what they're doing all of a sudden. Quote, working with foreign nationals. That's how you phrase that kind of intent, twisting things. So when my wife, or ex-wife, or whatever, when Janet saw that, her response to me was, quote, well, they've obviously been talking to somebody. And what she means by that is that someone selected someone selectively leaking information which has been twisted to that reporter, or maybe by the reporter. Maybe the reporter is the one that did the twisting for his own agenda. But here's the reality. In this field, every reliable source of information which becomes valuable intel, anyway, or nearly every human source, is not a U.S. citizen. That person is a citizen of elsewhere. Therefore, is, of course, by definition, a foreign national. But to phrase it that way, that implies that I was working for a foreign nation on behalf of foreigners. That is untrue, and it is absolutely absurd. The terms of that contract, and quite frankly, everything else, going all the way back to 1998, were entirely in this country's interests, until apparently it wasn't. Even activity, by the way, that was not even under an official blue or green assignment. Likewise, I also take great. This is a different one. I also take great umbrage to the recent reporter who claimed that my primary corporation was just a bunch of shell companies. That is not true. The fact is that each company did something entirely different. Think about it. I couldn't feasibly join the newspaper with the tax preparation business, or my music publishing with the Taekwondo schools, or the insurance brokerage with the satellite business. Now, could I? Those things don't even make, they don't go together. That doesn't make sense. They all had to be.
This call is from a federal prison.
Thank you so much. Separate companies, all under one umbrella. But they weren't all shells just because they all did different things. Each company was different, separate businesses under one corporation, under one CEO, me. That's how things actually work. The smaller entities, some were C-corps, some were S-corps, even sole proprietorships. Those are the best, by the way. Partnerships, even LLCs. They were all under one umbrella, if you will. So just learn to get things right, people. This is why the public, those of you to the press, this is why the public thinks you're not worthy of their trust. Those that are smart, anyway. But if you want their trust, just, go earn it. Also, one of the things that still bugs me, I hate to bring this up again, about WTVA, the television station, and the lie that they allowed Steve Holland to spew, and they never even bothered to correct it. Holland lies a lot. He's a pathological liar, but we all knew that, even to WTVA. But this one was an actual easy one for them to debunk. Holland claims that the FBI, and note that he had no name, no details of any FBI agent, no details of anything at all, claims that the FBI showed him a supposed email from me saying that hurting Sadie Holland, or even killing her, I guess, would hurt Steve Holland more than if I'd actually hurt Holland himself. Or maybe he told TVA the word killed. I really don't know. But WTVA could have immediately told Holland, all right, show us. Give us the names. Give us the details. But they didn't. And he didn't. And he didn't because he couldn't, because no such email ever existed. It was a lie, and he knows it. Holland lies. He's a pathological liar. It's not a surprise. It's not a shock. We already knew he was a liar. That's not what irks me. What irks me is WTVA, because I immediately physically wrote a letter to Craig Ford of WTVA, the news director there, in fact, challenged him with a video on top of that, and then had that video publicly posted. And others have actually emailed him and texted him and posted, challenging WTVA to clear up the record, to tell the truth, which is a simple thing to do. Just simply interview Holland again, telling him to bring the proof, bring the details, reveal the truth. But WTVA, they didn't. They did nothing, which means they failed you. The WTVA news department, who would try to sell you the idea that they're investigating and reporting the truth, they never even bothered with their one and only mission. They have failed. They failed you. They had the chance, and they failed. They had that opportunity. So I am, over the next few weeks, going to send up some call videos. My team will post them, as they do, at their pace, I guess. which will reveal to you the absolute proof that Kevin Curtis was the mailer, not me. Now, there's tons of actual evidence, most of which has already been presented in court by the FBI, in case you forgot. You just forgot it all. I'm going to list you 10, and I'll remind you, some of it's going to be new. Some of this is going to be new to you, including a bombshell piece of evidence, newly discovered evidence, which is the subject of an upcoming motion to the court. And as I was reviewing it the other night with someone on the phone with the proof in my hand, the reaction was actually clear. And everyone who hears and sees it has had the same reaction, which is really, good God, how the hell are you still in prison? So that newest bombshell, by the way, that's something that Netflix had, but they chose not to use, which lends credence to the idea of a season 2 of The Kings of Tupelo. But I asked the question, even if there was a straight-up admission by Kevin Curtis himself of his direct involvement in the mailing of the KC letters and the actual envelopes themselves. So even if I asked the question, even if there was a straight-up admission by Kevin Curtis himself of his direct involvement with the mailing of the KC letters and the actual envelopes themselves, and by the way, I question the validity of the Sadie Holland envelope. I'm not saying it didn't exist, but also I believe that there may have been a fourth envelope to David Daniels, in fact, but that one was hidden, who really could have become a whistleblower, a very important whistleblower on that very point. Anyway, even if there was a recorded confirmation of it, of Kevin Curtis's involvement with the envelopes themselves, by Kevin Curtis himself, there's no automatic mechanism, release button, which releases me and then forces the press to acknowledge the truth. In other words, even if the world was forced to admit tomorrow that I was not the mailer, something which you guys all knew once, in other words, that I am innocent, yet I'm still sitting in prison, would anyone care? Does anyone care? And sadly, I am now realizing that the answer, no. Unfortunate, but it's true. The judge certainly doesn't care. Not publicly. She's got to protect her ass. She's got to protect her conviction. She can't allow a miscarriage of justice in her court to be seen. The DOJ, the FBI, well, they're the ones that implemented this scheme in the first place. They have to keep it hidden. So they will do, they have done, by the way, everything possible to actually hide the truth, including getting their fixers involved. And I don't mean that in a figurative sense. The SAM order was proof of that. The censorship after the fact, by a completely different administration, although it was really kind of an extension of the other one, is proof of that. The obvious lies that we've already busted is proof of that. The entrapment schemes that ended up getting the FBI officers fired is kind of proof of that. The press, do they care? They don't care either, because they're far too publicly invested in 2013 and 14. They're far too publicly invested in their previous narrative. So the truth now exposes them as liars then. So they're going to try to cover it up. But what about the public? They don't care either. To the public, they think it's kind of cool. It's entertaining at best. Regardless, it's just not them, so, so what? That's my conclusion. I think it's baffling, because I personally cannot think that way. Because, listen, what I have done, the things which I have risked, the costs that I've paid, 14 years of a life that wasn't even fully mine, the things that I did for you to protect you and your family and your way of life, you're never even going to know. And I have the scars and the broken bones to remind me of that, of how much I cared about you. Eventually, I wanted my life back, mine, so that I could live for my own principles, my own objectives, my own goals. And for a time, I got that. But even then, there was something, that sense of duty just pulled, made me feel guilty, actually, for focusing on me. Something just felt missing. That obligation, that sense of duty that pulled at me. You know what that was? That was a sense of and not about me, because that wasn't enough, but about you. So naively, I've assumed, not just then, but all this time, that others cared too. That's the thing about our egos is that we think that other people think like we do, and they just don't. It's hard medicine for me to now recognize that. No one does. It's not you. It's just that it's not you. Anyway, that's where my head is today. That's definitely enough for now. That's my